Hey folks, it's 5:20 p.m. On the 30th of August 2023. That would be Tuesday, I guess, isn't it? Let's see. No, Wednesday. It's Wednesday. I can't tell, And I've been worse about that and other problems lately because a lot has gone, what I would say, wrong. In the simplest way, I would say very wrong. But I'm fully aware of the fact that for others it's been long anticipated and finally realized and carried off with the same sense of entitlement that I've known about for a very long time, and especially since being put here, where there are few choices for me to make. I could, compare myself to some doddering old senator or something. There are a couple of been in the news lately, and while it might be true that to say that somebody's a senator is the same as saying that somebody's lost his or her mind, sort of like the president, I can't really find myself interested in much of that anymore, simply because every effort, it seems, is to trivialize the kinds of things I care about. So I've tried to think of other things, and in a way to try to pick myself up off the floor and crawl into my chair here and watch a few things, read some stuff, and just not even pay attention to the cable satellite connection. It's defunct now anyway. I guess it'll be that way for some time. There are alternatives that are available to Philip, but he won't take them. I think he's going to wait until U-verse solves some sort of contractual dispute. That's understandable, I guess. I don't think that it'll ever be, something that I can watch ordinarily. I try to take some of that into account, and I try to see some of the people online doing maybe something a little bit better, but pretty soon what I've noticed is a kind of race to the bottom for a lot of people. But there's a whole new class, I say class, a whole new group of people doing better than they did. Of course, for me to watch, something has to happen, and YouTube has to change its algorithm, or others have to do something, so that in a serendipitous way, some decent people show up. And that's happened in a marked way, to a marked degree lately. It hasn't been the academic stuff, it hasn't been some newfound, what's his name? The skeptic or the agnostic, what's his name? I was mentioning him just the other day. He died of throat cancer. Anyway, very famous. I can't remember names anymore. I hardly remember my own. But there are people who specialize in ideas, abstractions, and they handle them with great authority. By that I mean skill. Others can't, and they work with their hands. And what could be better? Because if a person is able to design a something, using ideas, manipulating concepts of force or energy or one thing or another, and comes up with a blueprint for something. Somebody has to actually rivet something together, And probably the one with the slide rule doesn't have to do that, and probably couldn't do that. His time is caught up in something more abstruse. So, but all those distinctions are having a tough time nowadays. When people can enroll in school, some cushy plan to graduate as a computer programmer or sociologist or what, they're not going to end up at MIT when they transfer out of a community college. But that's okay, if things are kept fairly effective in all the circles people get into. But I was thinking, and I'll cut through a lot of stuff just to the point that I want to make. I've wasted 6 minutes so far in my usual way. In this great number of people, for example, there's an engineer or engineering company in Canada able to do wonders with some extremely costly machinery to make parts lickety-split, dare I say, maybe that's poor choice of words, but, to take, thousands of dollars worth of steel or whatever, of a certain alloy for a certain purpose, a certain client, a certain result, and get the job done correctly because of the wealth of knowledge that an engineer carries in his head. Some people can, if they strive to, memorize anything, it might be the alphabet, alphabetical order. Beyond that, what might they apprehend? Well, there are a lot of people who memorize stuff in medicine, for example, and so on. So I've run across a bunch of people who know all that stuff and could easily get a job, telling people how to grow corn, but they're better people than that, They're better than that. And then there's some really special, and I refer you to a website, a vlog called Struggling PhD Student or something like that. Nice young man who goes through some of the math that he does, freely admits, why he's doing it, what his plans are, and so on. And for those of you who are interested, you'll find the notation very interesting. I find it interesting to see just what they're up to, and of course, he's at a very famous school, so I won't bother you with all that. But anyway, and I got to thinking that and some other people who are doing things on the academic side, and then I thought, I've come across some a long time ago who said, well, I can't be a vlogger, or I can't do this or that, because all I can do is try to think of, a trick or a joke for, a small, short piece of video, and see if a million people watch it or something. I haven't found anybody willing to say, I might be in the 8th grade or the 10th grade or a senior in high school or even in college. I might be situated not to, get some prize for, a number of hits for one reason or another, but I might, do something like that struggling PhD student and actually talk about what he's actually doing and what he's learning, and at the same time, safeguard particular information that would not be in his interest to talk about. I've noticed that kids say, what difference does it make if I have a GoPro and nothing to take a picture of. Well, you know what they do, a lot of them, and I don't blame them. I mean, parents get upset with it. I don't. I think they grow up in a different world, and so they're going to show their face. Their faces, with their smartphones. But what if they decided to say, okay, welcome to, such and such, and expound on what students are doing about civics, and how they find themselves unable to find any school or teachers willing to talk about anything that we used to call civics when I taught it. I taught that years ago. Some call it government class, and now it's just kind of more as part of what people call history, whether it's American history, what that is worth, or anything else. Do they compare what they want to know about with what they get? Do they know how to talk about things in general rather than give a zip code of everybody who's failing to help the students? No, there could be vlogs about something as interesting as maybe somebody with special standing, like, for example, it's been a long time in student years since the Columbine massacre. I think that it would be wrong for anybody there to try to get into that online as a kid, and wrestle with people who have vested interest in narratives of one kind or another. But it could be said, hey, I'm a student here at Columbine, and let me tell you how things are going. There must be some people smart enough to know exactly what I'm talking about. If it's not Columbine, then maybe it could be a magnet school in Cambridge or something. Or just about anything, really. I used to joke about how, the kids in, for example, Venezuela were marveling as kids sent word from North Dakota about the snow in their backyard. And turning that around, the people in North Dakota marveled at the beaches that people have, in South America. So there was that. That's kind of short and not really protracted. But beyond that, it seems to me that maybe I just have the wrong algorithms. When I log on, I don't think a VPN would help me. And don't get me started on that. I have no reason to win any arguments on the basis of the information I have, but I can say that in any event, if I had, plenty of money, I would toss a little bit in that direction. If I lived in Georgia, adjacent to Russia, or something like that. But short of that, but there is an analogy, about this touted business. It's a giveaway, and it's a giveaway, and it's complicated. But some people go on and say it works this way. They don't know where you are, so a hotel will quote you better rates if they don't think you're right outside their door, or so on, and yada yada yada. Well, that's true, but the real trade-off is about things that I don't want to talk about. But I would say, for me, there is the fact that I know that, with just shy of 6 million uploads every day, it would be impossible, I think, to say that kindred spirits simply don't exist. Instead, I have to think, about a lack of serendipity. And I'm not one of these people who feels entitled. I don't need to, pound on the door of YouTube or Google and say, I'm entitled to serendipity that suits my sensibilities. But I can't say, that it is not impossible to understand, my experience. So I drag myself up off the floor and sit down and do the best I can, hoping that maybe I can buy some paper shirts after the first of the month. And not only that, but in the same sense, I kind of drag myself in front of the camera. Yes, I've gotten some good advice about, what I ought to keep in mind about readership. So I might use the keyboard somewhat less than I used to, but so I do the same thing in front of the camera in terms of dragging myself up off the floor after the people here have their way. I turn on the camera, or I read or hear or view some stuff. I know, and everybody knows, there's a lot of open secrets, though there's some room for discovery. The last refuge sometimes has been, well, hold on, we have something to discover. Yeah, right. But anyway, it's not, I don't mean to make it sound too bad, but I know it could be better, but for the fact that it isn't likely because of the complications, So, but I can envision the idea of not just these red-hot, raw, woke, or slumbering, snoring people doing something, with words as best they can. And aren't they something? There may be some students who say, well, I can just tell you I have this reaction to, what goes on, and they've got to keep it safe, but they could let people know, and the networking could take place. And it could be an open-ended thing, not, something that would offend people who might ought to hear, right? There are people who ought to hear from students, and yet students might not want to bother, and the reasons for that are manifold and can be addressed, but it's not for me to do that. Students can do that. And that doesn't mean that suddenly you have 4,000 new subscribers every week. So, as a rule, I haven't used YouTube much in a long time. But I might, if I remember, I'm a habitual person. Typically, I upload straight to Facebook because I'm not interested in, okay, hit that like button and subscribe and join Patreon and just write a big check and mail it to, or what, use your PayPal and empty your bank account. And look at my merch. I'm selling cars and houses and everything. Well, my goodness, folks, I don't mind that. In fact, some of my favorite people would call themselves, practicing vloggers, whose income, at least for now, is largely through vlogging. I know one particular man who worked very hard and found himself now in a position to upload almost anything, although, it's always good, I'll say that. But he could upload just about anything, whatever's on his mind, and before the week is out, he'll have over 2 million views, and he has over 3.5 million subscribers. That happens because of merit. Now, if you get into some controversial stuff like, Hitchens, that's who I try to remember. See, my mind is gone. Christopher Hitchens, who died of throat cancer at a fairly young age. He had a family. He had some kids and wife, all that. He died of throat cancer, and it was a terrible death, as you can imagine. Come in.
You like fish?
Well, sometimes it depends on the fish.
Sticks.
Well, I'll tell you what. I will enjoy the French fries more than those fish.
Will you enjoy all?
And I thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You never did find the tray, did you?
I forgot to look.
Oh well.
I've been training that girl. I'm going back to the kitchen right now.
The next time I see you, I'm going to see both hands covered with strings tied on each finger, right? And then you'll have to try to remember what they're for. See you later. Oh, now then what? Let's see there. It's a good thing I have alternatives, and the day after tomorrow I'll feel better. What was I saying? If I thought myself, for example, to be aware of what is done in a good college or university or a college, part of a university, or anything like that, could I conceive the notion of already having some communication skills? And rather than go to the lush, campus handball court, how about expressing oneself beyond the politicians and the motor mouth people who really attract people because of provocative stuff, On the one hand, people are snoring. On the other hand, they're woke. And in between, I can't say. But it's as though they just, they're not going to talk because what? They're busy, dating and traveling and what? Hiking up a mountain and then back down again. I don't know. But I do know that I never had the option of finishing my homework and then, sharing my thoughts with folks online without necessarily strings attached and all of that, On the other hand, there are those who are so paranoid that it affects the content, kind of warps what they're doing. They're not candid about anything, whereas the idea, the technique would be to be candid about everything except that which entangles a person terribly, But anyway, I think kids know about all that without even thinking, and then the question becomes, well, have they not thought through anything? I mean, for example, one issue, that I have thought about is, I've gotten a lip service, the lip service. Come in.
Here, Clyde, I'm
sorry. Now that, thank you.
They washed it and forgot to bring it back.
Do you know what this, because I looked it up because I was worried I was going to have to buy one. I bought some, and I said to Christy, Christy, look, this looks exactly like, the ones you have. And we were trying to come up with some. She said she was going to think about it. And neither one of us could think of anything that would be, drill a hole and put a string. We didn't come up with anything. So I just used it differently, namely keeping it in here. But do you know what these cost? About $10 for good. They have some down to $6.
Those are the kind that they have at the hospital.
Well, the ones like this, they list them at a good. There's some that you can bend. Nothing. They cost $10 plus postage, or you could get something that you wish you didn't send you.
Are they disposable?
No, they're not. No, they ought to be. Yeah, the ones that cost about $5 and $6. You ought to just use it and throw it away. They're really no good. But this is what and this, you see, is my kitchen table.
Yes,
I put this on my bed, and then I can cut my pizza.
Yeah.
But it was so sarcastic when Philip said, David, you use, no, he says Clyde. Here I'm called Clyde. Clyde, are you using your freezer? And I say, every day. What could he say, And then to find out he's taking the tray. So he didn't ask. He said, is this yours? No, he doesn't ask. He doesn't ask. It's that passive, you know what passive aggressive is? He doesn't like me or what I stand for. But he's sophisticated enough to know that what he's for is literally extrajudicial hatred. Some people feel that they have the right not only to hate, but to make trouble for people. Fortunately, I don't particularly hate anybody, but I heard somebody online the other day say, well, I will argue that people have the right to hate, but they better not trespass. That's kind of the first step, but he's trespassed a lot. But anyway, thank you. Shakespeare wrote something, he titled a play. He was a playwright. There's a play, it's not really about something like this, but the title you probably have heard, All's Well That Ends Well. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
This means that all my pizzas are now feasible again. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a good day. Now, what was I saying? See here, folks, this is my tray. This is, what I got to use, and it was, the last raid did a lot of damage. That's not the only thing that's missing, Where can I put this? If I put it over there, they'll take it again. Behind me here. I can park this right here until I put it back over on the freezer. What was I saying? Something about drawing a line and so on, that kids can do. Kids could, now we've got to turn on the air conditioner again. That's one thing. I talk about the frequency of my ballpoint pen. I should do something with it. Thermostat too someday. When I become an entitled autocrat. Anyway. The sweet point on that thing is between two of the notches. I've tried different speeds for the fan, different settings for the louvers, everything, and the goalpost moves. Anyway, so I have to turn it off and on. What was I saying? Something about kids. Yeah, about paranoia. My point is, if people, particularly if they aspire to do things that are inherent to communication per se, unless you're so cosmic that you say, well, my lug wrench allows me to communicate people when I fail to tighten lug nuts safely, which is something I've experienced. You might say, well, that's very communicative. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about not arson. Arson, burning the American flag is free expression, according to the court. That's a little bit different from burning a house down. But I want to say, that if you want to actually work with ideas, and not necessarily with the ideas as they relate to what some people can do with them, then, it seems to me that out of, nearly 600 uploads a day, there'd be a few between high schoolers, just take those 4 years, high schoolers who are not trying to, do what does get through on my front page, which is, fine. I mean, they're nice people, but what about someone in high school that is similar to some people in England who finished university? Because there are people like that, and the people I have in mind in the UK know that there's a certain agelessness about some folks. It's very much like, there's a young man in Tennessee who once lived in Pasadena, California, who has started a company, a business there, and also is a concert pianist. And he's been at that level since he was a young teenager. That's not unusual at all. Well, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say that. I mean, there are a lot of people who can do that. There are a lot of people who do that with words, but they don't often choose to do what I maintain to be something worthwhile. Certainly in terms of using a camera and a keyboard, to communicate. Now then, I grant you that there may be those who might do what I do with my phone. I sometimes record stuff and just aim my telephone camera at the ceiling or the walls, or rather than my face. Well, in this case, I do this because of what's obvious. I'm not likely to have some of the problems that some people have online, when really they need to be dealing with those problems offline more often than not. But anyway, aside from that, caveat, it seems to me, well, for example, someone willing to talk about a whole bunch of stuff could get a legal pad, write down some talking points, and beside the talking points, arrange to have a slideshow, so that moving from one to another point with prose is accompanied in the final product with a very simple to do slideshow. Not necessarily PowerPoint, but something else maybe. And not, too elaborate or anything, but I'm a minimalist in a lot of ways. For one thing, I'm impatient with editing. I used to do minimal amount of editing. And then when Microsoft retired some of the simple stuff and said, no, we're not going to do that anymore, y'all go off and buy your own software. And then the software more and more turned into, a game, a video game. I don't want to play that game. And then Microsoft got back into the fray with a half-hearted array of possibilities. I don't know why it is, but people like to get a suite or something and basically play with the videos rather than slam bam, get it done. I think it's part of some sort of race to the bottom again. But I think if I were in a high school where simplistic notions passed for the kinds of things that people were asked to memorize and regurgitate, or use in a multiple choice question, or are people teaching to a test or not, and what about the Gulf of Tonkin? Does that matter to anybody? Or what? I know, at one time, one of the most effective times that I was kneecapped, and I've been kneecapped almost without recourse, was done by an uncle who taught at the Air Force Academy. Thought he knew something about Vietnam when he didn't. And he was fired about 3 years later. But, the damage was done to me. I mean, nobody sent me some sort of apology. Anyway, there are those who are, can generalize, dare I say generalize, very well, and they are in high school. The other day I read about some people not far from where I sit. In fact, in one town, 2 people scored a perfect score on the ACT, or whatever it is. What is it, 36? Is that right? 2 people scored perfect ACT. Now then, while everybody can talk about, what's wrong, and there's a lot wrong, there are those who do things like that. For example, I know a lot of people already know this, but one of my classmates in my school, where I went to prep school, there were, 6 National Merit Scholars in my class. One of them was named Tommy Bing, B-I-N-G. And I shouldn't have to tell you anything but that. There are people who make perfect scores who then do not somehow ally themselves with Wayne Morris when it can count. And who is the Wayne Morris of the hour? Well, there's probably a Wayne Morris in every other high school, and only 1 in 100 will ever do anything like Wayne Morris on Gulf of Tonkin. Not talking about all the rest, just on the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. What can be talked about? Why can't youth do that? I know that if there are people who can play the piano the way I've heard it, then they probably have something to say, and paradoxically they choose not to say it. Why? Because they can do better with the piano. But not all of us can do better with the piano, and so then, you play the hand you're dealt. And I say, look, if you're dealt a hand that includes your ability to say something, then if you have something to say, then I hope you will say it. I haven't said anything here. I've wasted some of your time. But yes, I was prompted to say this by some folks that I concern myself with, without even having met, now that it isn't, I don't want to mislead people, because, when I'm in touch with people, who are my age, or fewer and fewer now are actually older and still doing anything, but there's some. But when I'm in touch with people my age, then a lot of the stuff, the projections, and the stupid concerns really make it impossible to be heard. I know there are people who are in high school that never had trouble with that when I was in high school, prep school, or anything of the sort. And I just don't believe that they are, somehow constrained by some invisible hand in the marketplace, or Egypt, or what. But nevertheless, they soak up a lot of data, like Tommy Bing did. Tommy Bing is now probably retired from a responsible position with a very well-known phone company, where he did some engineering at a level that did not necessarily involve schematics so much as flowcharts, because of his attainment of certain prerogatives. But he didn't move above a certain level because he was always extremely modest, painfully shy, and just would prefer to do what he did for, I guess, maybe 30 years. Well, that's fine. Where are the ones who could step forward? I know there are many people who can remember being in classes not wanting to raise a hand to answer a question. I know what that feels like. But, when people think through all that, they won't need to, major in political science or sociology or psychology to try to struggle through to an understanding of what is fortunately second nature to a lot of folks. If you were in a world where the object of the game was to, sink a round ball with a switch of the net, yeah, you'd be struggling, wouldn't you? You'd be struggling. Meanwhile, Sessions would, pivot and shoot and forget about it. So, with the allocation of resources being a major idea, and social mobility still misunderstood more often than not, then the allocation of resources includes that of talents of one kind or another. A dukery is sometimes when you get that person who won't raise his hand to speak up somehow. And sometimes that depends on a context that is very evasive, elusive. But with the internet, much of that is simply passé, and in a real sense, and yet what the real news would be maybe people not wanting to freak out like Steve Jobs. I don't think we need another Steve Jobs, that sort of thing. Now that people say, well, you have to race to the bottom and do what he did. Well, I would just say, been there, done that. How about something better? And I think that there are those who can. I know there are. I can derive that. I can't see around corners. The whole story about my situation. I can't see around corners, but I can derive a lot of stuff because if you use an idea here or there, then you can find out what happens to the variables. Okay, well, good luck. I don't know whether there's going to be a microscope or a camera or a pair of snow skis under the tree in a few months, but maybe the sophomores among us will help out the juniors and the seniors and the freshmen. And then people will have to worry about their Greek summarization of why the second year of high school was given such a name. And who can say something good about that? All right, it's less than 43 minutes, so I had better say thank you for helping me today, folks. I dragged myself into this chair, and I am better off for having done so. I would like to do something similar without my face into the camera, but it didn't turn out that way. So have a good one, folks.